Welcome to another edition of the Schmidt Storm. You have questions, I've got answers. Let's get started. The question is how is Elon Musk's antics in Wisconsin not been flagged immediately for election interference? So the first thing I want to say about this question is great question. I want to focus on the words election interference because these words have become contaminated. And there is no crime of election interference, such as it is, though certainly interfering in an election can be a crime. What Elon Musk is doing, handing out million-dollar checks, seems to me to be certainly dubious, unethical, deeply corrupting to the practice of democracy. But is it illegal in Wisconsin? I don't know. I'm not a Wisconsin election law expert. I do know this. The French minister who said, we cannot let the security of Europe hang at the whim of a Wisconsin voter every 4 years, is spot on. The corruption of money in the American system is beyond the worst imaginations of anybody who ever predicted what the result of Citizens United, of McCain-Feingold, which wrought predictably Citizens United, would be. American democracy has been sold to the highest bidder. The scene in the inaugural Trump seating his oligarchs in front of the cabinet, all of this is a mark of corruption. And when Democrats take power again, it can't be for the purposes of maintaining Chuck Schumer as majority leader. There must be fundamental campaign finance reform. And there has to be thought given to a constitutional amendment that fixes permanently the financing mechanisms that have corrupted and endangered American liberty. There has to be fundamental ethics reform. There has to be an elimination of special government employees. There has to be an end of one set of rules for people at the top and a different set for everybody else. So election interference, yes. Elon Musk is interfering in every election in the world through his platform that is filled with lies and propaganda, and specifically Russian misinformation and disinformation that's aimed to undermine faith in democracy, belief in Western systems, belief in the rule of law, to pit citizens against one another. All of this is interference. When the richest man in the world says in Germany, you must support the AfD, and does everything he can to help them, it's a party led by Nazis. It's common as a member of the AfD to cut your face, to leave a scar, to show your devotion to the party. It's anti-American, it's anti-NATO, it's pro-Russian. So what he did in Wisconsin is a piece, and it was overcome by the power that can defeat Muskism, that can defeat all of this. And that's the power of the American people and the power of a unified opposition to say no. You will not buy away from us with bribes our birthright. We will not surrender our democracy through acts of capitulation and surrender. So election interference, what we have in America is an election contamination problem, not an interference problem. Though interference, there's a lot of it. Question is, do I expect any repercussions to come from the investigations of SignalGate? No, there will be no repercussions from the investigations into SignalGate. There will, however, be massive repercussions due to the lack of investigations into SignalGate. What it will do is destroy the morale of the United States military at a battalion level, at a company level, at a platoon level, at an NCO level. What it will do is assert a poison into the ranks that is a cancer to the training that every American soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine receives. It's a refutation of their education about three things: authority, responsibility, and accountability. The sign that hangs over the Marine Corps Officer Candidate School entrance in Quantico, Virginia says Ductos Exemplos, lead by example. Accountability for the things you are responsible for and have authority for is the rock upon which the values of the American military have been laid over 250 years. So the consequence of the assertion that says rules are for the privates and the corporals and the sergeants, rules are for the lieutenants and the captains and the majors and the lieutenant colonels and the colonels, rarely for a general, but never, ever for their civilian leadership. The higher you are, the more insulated you are from accountability. One set of rules for the people at the top, different set of rules for the serfs at the bottom. That destroys a military organization. It destroys discipline. It destroys order. And what it will cause is a collapse of discipline and good order in the United States military to levels not seen since the end of the Vietnam War, which coincidentally came 50 years ago, this April, the 30th of April, 1975, when in scenes of chaos, America's longest failed war up to that point came to an end with helicopters being pushed off of aircraft carriers at sea. The resiliency of the American military and its recovery took a generation and an awful lot of exquisite leadership. And that will be required again, because what Trump and Pete Hegseth and Mike Waltz and Tulsi Gabbard and Marco Rubio and all the rest of the clowns, Steve Witkoff, Howard Lutnick, all of them have done is not just breach faith, not just give away the positions of aircraft carriers during a military operation, not just give away the position of the pilots and give advance warning of a strike. Not only did they do that, they did it with one of them sitting in Moscow where the Russians read it in real time. The crime here is that they did those things for which everybody below the rank of general would go to jail for, and they are celebrated by the President of the United States and praised on the pages of the Washington Post by a dishonest hack like Mark Thiessen, who says, no, it's not incompetence, it's leadership, it's genius. War is peace, up is down, red is blue. Pete Hegseth, he's like Eisenhower. The quote on Eisenhower's grave talks about the necessity for humility when praise comes from the blood spilled by others and the sacrifices of others still. Appalling doesn't begin to describe the lack of accountability. So, will there be consequences? There will. And they will be graver than any American can conceivably imagine. It has made the world and our children much more dangerous and endangered. The question is about the impact of these tariffs on America's farmers and the consumers of America's farms. Prices are going to go up and many farmers will go bankrupt. That is the consequence of these tariffs. Farms that have withstood all manner of challenges, weather, storm, disaster, financial recession, all of it, they will go under. Prices will go up. The whole insanity of Maha will be exposed because in the end, obesity in these conditions are all rooted in poverty. And the more poor people there are, the more obesity there will be, the lack of healthy food, all a function of a collapsing farm economy, all of it a function of collapsing purchase power as wages go down, as jobs disappear, and prices go up as a direct result of the Trump actions, the Trump economic suicide. The chart to look carefully at is the stock market, but more closely still at the dollar's value. That dollar collapse means America's position in the world is diminishing. The bets being made against America now are everywhere. And let me just show you what the Canadian Prime Minister said to leave it there.
The President's actions will reverberate here in Canada and across the world. Three different sets of U.S. tariffs remain in place and will continue to pose significant threats to Canadian workers and Canadian businesses.
An era has ended, and the United States of America was the chief beneficiary of the era that saw it reign as the most powerful nation in the world's dominant military, economic, social, cultural, exploration, scientific power, and greatest force for good in world history. Donald Trump ran saying that all of that was a lie, all of that was a burden. America was getting screwed. America was the sucker. America's leaders were stupid, all of them, except for Trump. All of the experts are wrong. All of the economists are liars. All of the scientists are in on a scheme to screw everybody everywhere all at once. There's no evidence, of course, just Donald Trump's assertions and the repetition and the interpretation of the repetition on absurd shows like whichever one might have Scott Jennings on at any particular moment. All of it has led to a moment where Donald Trump, the man who has hailed himself as a world historical genius, defied history, defied logic, defied common sense, defied economics, defied the national interest, defied values, defied alliances and friendships, and picked up a poster board and hugged it close and rambled on and devastated, after 80 years, America's standing in preeminence in the world. At the edge of the celebrations of the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Allied powers against Nazism. So when Donald Trump stands there next to the leaders of Denmark and Canada, two nations he threatens, Great Britain and France, it's a desecration. It's an obscenity. All of this is. America's farmers deserve better. America's consumers deserve better. America's poor people deserve better. Everybody deserves better, but not everybody voted for better. But let's be honest about that. Maybe better wasn't on the ballot. Maybe there was just a different alternative to Trump. Maybe the politics of joy didn't cut it. Maybe Brett Summer didn't get it done. Maybe chanting, "We will win," while voting to confirm Marco Rubio wasn't the right thing to do, Chuck Schumer. Just maybe defiance is called for. Maybe that's the answer to Trump's belligerence. Maybe that's the remedy to the suffering, to make it stop by saying no and making the no stick. Across the country, Democratic Party has serially disinvested in the American South, in the Intermountain West. Vast tracts of America have been abandoned and forsaken and let to rot in the hands of political extremists who have gutted public education, who have gutted public health care. As the roads decay, as the infrastructure decays, as everybody falls behind, as the obesity rates skyrocket and the illness rates skyrocket. These places in America should be the places where the Democrats spend their first dollar to awaken the American people and to say that there's a party that stands for ordinary people and against the proposition that might makes right. The great Democratic Party of the United States of America needs to resurrect itself in the places it has abandoned, lest those places become hollow receptacles for some of the greatest lies that have been told in the history of the country, that have gained force and momentum and power in the second and third decades of the 21st century and now imperil the entire American project, the entire cause of America's purpose, liberty, and freedom in the 250th anniversary year of our independence, because a selfish people in a decaying land, decadent beyond measurement, picked a reality television show with his head so far up his ass, there's not a word for it, to hold the most powerful office in the world, command thousands of nuclear weapons, and be the custodian of some of the most important texts and tracts in the history of the world that define and defend the rule of law and human dignity and freedom. So in 2 years' time, the American people can wipe away this Congress, get rid of the capitulators, get rid of the appeasers, get rid of the ambitious strivers, and get decent, normal people who can sit in a room, tolerate dissent, and figure out complexities and how to make the country the best version of itself that it can be, just like Americans have done for 10 generations until this generation of clowns came along. I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning. I invite you to join this community where I promise to be honest, blunt, and direct about what is happening in this country. America is in crisis. Follow and subscribe to this channel and on Substack. Thank you.